All right. Okay, well, let's dive in and get started. My name is Allison Keller, and I work in the Division of Career Pathways and help students with really all pieces of the job, internship, career development process. And the focus of today is really about writing effective resumes and CVs for competitive scholarships. And I know also some of you work in the scholarship office and are probably working on writing your own resumes and so forth. So a lot of this information would be applicable for you as well. So let's dive in and get started. And, first I want to talk about these two different terms we're using to describe this document, resumes and CVs, and how they might be different and similar. So CV, which is an abbreviation for curriculum vitae, is a fancy term that really describes what I think of as a very academic and comprehensive resume. It's something that you can use to really document all of the different work that you've done academically and professionally. There are less limits on, I would say, length, meaning you want to document everything, especially if you're going down an academic pathway and you're involved in research, you're involved in publications or posters and papers. They all should be on there. It's a good place to keep track of that. For fun, you may want to, check out some of your faculty mentors and some of your advisors, and you can look up on UCI's website their CVs, and you'll see how comprehensive and long they are because they've been so involved in academics and research, and it can give you a good sense of what it would look like over a career. As an undergraduate student, it will be briefer. We would expect that. So we're not looking for pages and pages, but it might be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 pages is most typical for our undergraduate CVs that we see. Now, this is a little bit in contrast to a resume, and a resume is usually something that's more tailored. It is typically more of a snapshot or a highlight reel that is really tailored to what it is you're using it for. Meaning, if you're applying for a specific internship in something in social media marketing, it really would take your experiences or your skills that relate to that position and be highlighted on that one page. It may not have every single thing that you've done over time because you want it to be that snapshot of that most relevant experience, ideally. So that's something just to be aware of, and we'll kind of dive more into some of these nuances of the differences. Some of your scholarship programs will ask for a CV, and so and some may ask for a resume. Sometimes they can be used, I'll be honest, a little bit interchangeably for the undergraduate population, but we'll dive into how they might be slightly different and see if you have questions. So you have a lot of categories you can choose from when you're writing a CV or writing a resume. Some are standard, like you're always going to have your contact information, your name, your education will be posted, etc. It is more typical on a CV that you have more academic categories, and those might be categories such as, if you have them, things like publications or research experience or conferences or grants, things like that, maybe other awards you've received. For resumes, those are probably less typical. There's probably more emphasis on experience, and it could be research experience, it could be work experience. There might also be more emphasis on the skills that relate to the position itself. So the right column has some of those red categories that probably are less common to see in resumes versus CVs. So I'm going to walk through each one, and I'm going to start with the resume and kind of talk about the format, what it would look like. You're going to hear a lot of overlap though between the two, but I'll point out some of the nuances and differences between the two. So on average, someone reading your resume, maybe an organization, maybe a government entity, they're going to be looking at it and scanning it briefly. And they say on average, that scan is about 6 seconds. So we spend a lot of time and attention on what it is that's popping out of the resume. What is catching someone's eye? Is there too much information? Is it full of a lot of text and I have to read it and I can't do that in 6 seconds? Or am I able to notice really quickly, oh, I see here there's a relevant experience. Here there's a relevant skill. I can find really quickly, I want to see perhaps what languages that you speak, or maybe I want to see the major that you're in, etc. Can I find information quickly? So formatting is very important on these documents. And that's part of the reason why, is that we want certain things to stand out. And one thing I always recommend to students is when you have your document where you want it to be, go ahead and give it to someone who has not seen it before for just a few seconds. Take it away and ask them what they remember about your page. And I think that's really helpful to see what is popping out. Did they notice the most important things that you think are relevant to wherever it is that you're applying for? So employers' feedback is that in reviewing resumes, they do want to see what's relevant. Obviously, here are a couple quotes from some of our employers. We see a lot of students utilizing projects on resumes, so it's not all just about work and jobs. You're a student, so sometimes there might be class projects that can really be relevant to industry. It could also be really analyzing that job description to see what is it that they're looking for, and what experiences have I had that align with that position? That's what I'm going to choose to put on here rather than everything I did in that role. I'm going to really highlight and focus that specific area that seems to be most important. Here is a kind of a rough outline of what a one-page resume would entail. And in general, some of these things you do want to follow. You want to have your contact information up at the top, and contact information should include your name. It should include an email address. It should include a phone number. Very rarely am I seeing address anymore, so that is not a requirement. Sometimes students will opt to include it, but it's more common. I'll see a city and a state or city country instead of the full address for privacy reasons. However, if you do have something that you would like to include, such as a LinkedIn profile or an online portfolio that represents your work, or perhaps you have a GitHub site, depending on you and your experiences and how you want to demonstrate your professional skills, feel free to include that if that could be an asset for you. After that, some people will have, this is optional, but they'll have a very brief kind of summary of what it is they're applying for. And then diving into education. For most current students, education is towards the top of your page. You are a current student and you want to highlight that. So that does tend to rise to the top of resumes. One thing I notice in reviewing resumes is the first time you are mentioning something such as University of California, Irvine, you want to spell it out. So I'm being very deliberate in saying the full name because especially the first time you use a name such as that, spell it out. If after that you want to, or maybe for other programs that you're in, you want to use an acronym, that's okay, and include the acronym after the first time you've spelled it out. Some things that are so familiar to us as UCI students and affiliates that we're so used to UCI, but if you're applying to, some of these very national or international organizations, you want it to be very clear. Go ahead and include the degree you are aspiring to earn. So if that's a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science, and when you intend to receive that degree. If you are getting double majors, triple majors, minors, specialization, anything academic could go in this section, in the education section, and would be very appropriate there. For resumes, if you have a strong GPA, some people do definitely include that. I always use cues from the job description. If I'm seeing a GPA minimum mentioned, then it's probably wise to include your GPA if you do meet that GPA threshold. Some positions, I'll be very honest, it's not as important for and not as much of a criteria. So it is a personal decision depending on you and where your GPA is, if you would include it. Other things in education I sometimes see is honors, like if you're part of an honors program with the school or your major. Sometimes I'll also see a very brief line or two that includes relevant coursework. So if you're in a major that by title is kind of general and you've taken a lot of upper division classes that relate to what it is you're applying for, it might be great to show them that, because some jobs and internships won't ask to see a transcript. So all they know about your major is, let's say, psychology. But if you're applying to something that's working with adolescents and youth, and you've taken a lot of classes on developmental psychology, upper division classes, that might be good to note so they know you've had that specialized coursework. Okay, we're going to dive more into experience and skills and so forth on the next couple of slides, but I'm starting here on both CVs and resumes. You will start with contact. You will probably have education high up on the page as well. I don't see summary of qualifications as much on CVs. It's more of something I sometimes see on resumes, but again, that's optional on resumes as well. So let's dive into this big part of the resume, and that's going to be your experience section. So really think about experience broadly. So I know a lot of times we think about experience as jobs, as employment, and certainly that can fit underneath this umbrella, but you can think about it more more broadly. Experience can also be research. It may be volunteer work. It may be a club or an organization where you are a student leader. It can really be any kind of experience where you are gaining skills that you would potentially be able to contribute in the future. So do think about it broadly of what could be included in this category. Some people find it useful to break down experience and not just call it experience, but maybe they'll have a section called research and then another section called leadership, for example. Or they're applying to something and they've had a lot of experience in that field and they want to mention higher education experience because they've had a lot of campus leadership roles and positions, and that's what they're going for in the future. So they want to highlight those, and they'll have their own section header called higher education experience. So make this your own. There's not one cookie cutter template that you should follow for this. It really should depend on how you're using this document, where you're sending it, but also what you have to contribute and to add to the page. I'm just peeking because there's a question. Oh, okay. There's a good question about what is the difference between summary of qualifications and the education? A great question. So education is usually the very factual University of California, Irvine, Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, June 2024 is when you're going to earn that, etc. Summary of qualifications is usually more of a general statement that showcases kind of, again, a summary of the whole page. So you might highlight that you've had some experiences and some skills that will prepare you for however you're using this document. So let's say you're looking to go into the aerospace engineering industry. You might focus on those skills and experiences or projects that you've had, and that this is the kind of position you want to go into. I'll share some examples so you can see that at the end. But, I'll be very honest with you, on resumes, a lot of people, because they're a page, they don't include it because they have other content they want to include on that one page. So a lot of times it's a logical area to just to cut and save that space for more content on your page. So it's fine not to have the summary of qualifications as well. Thank you for your question. All right. So I want to also talk a bit about skills, because skills are something on resumes and CVs you'll want to be documenting. On resumes, we really want to think about transferability of your skills. So you are applying for a position, and so you want to think about what skills have you developed. For example, if you work in the Scholarship Opportunities Program office, thinking about all the things that you do, whether it's working directly with students, with faculty members, maybe you're doing some admin work, maybe you're working on website content, etc. And thinking about, what is it that I do that I maybe wouldn't be doing this exact job in the future, but in the future, I'm going to be communicating with others. I'm going to be writing content. I'm maybe going to be taking a big project and breaking it down into pieces and analyzing and prioritizing tasks. So those are kind of transferability things that you want to be thinking about, because we've all had positions that don't necessarily relate to what it is we want to do in the future, but there's still things we carry from those positions, whether we realize it or not. And we want as much as possible to try to showcase those skills. So some people call them portable skills, the transferable skills, things that you're going to take with you. That can be used across industries. So you might be a barista at Starbucks, but that work that you have learned in teamwork and relating to all kinds of diverse people, you can take into probably any job in the future after working at a Starbucks. So useful in a variety of jobs, and examples would be things like communication skills, giving feedback, receiving feedback, nonverbal communication, being responsive, being on time. Public speaking may be one, active listening. I mean, this is just a short list. It could go on and will be dependent on what you've done as well. So on your resume, you want to be documenting skills. Some will come out within the experiences that you have. A lot of people will also have a skills section and include things such as technical skills. And these might be skills such as, depending on your area, it might be, computer skills, programming languages. It may be spoken or written languages that it may be computer technologies that you use. And sometimes those can be really even basic things. If you see a job descriptions looking for someone that's familiar with PowerPoint, with Canva, with Google, Sheets, whatever it happens to be, go ahead and put those on your resume. One thing I haven't talked a lot about yet is that some companies will use keywords in the first pass of a resume. So you'd submit a resume to their site, and they'll actually be scanning it for words that kind of align with the position that they're looking for. So you want to be very responsive to that position. And so if they've mentioned a technology, and you may think, of course I have that skill, but if it's mentioned in the job description, I highly recommend including it for that reason, in case there's some kind of AI system looking at your resume, comparing it to the position you're applying for. Interpersonal skills tend to be great to showcase when you describe your experiences. So you don't necessarily on a resume just want to list that you are a good listener or you are a leader, let's say. Rather, you want to try to show them. So try to demonstrate it through the experiences that you collaborated with a team to do something, or you can give them an example of a time in work that you had to solve problems, that sort of thing. And you also can integrate personal skills, and that might be something like being creative, that may be innovation, or it could be a person that takes a lot of initiative in what you do, etc. So how do you determine what should go on this one-page document of a resume? So for the resume, you really want to be thinking, and I would say for scholarships as well, you really want to study where it is you're applying. You are going to get a sense of what they're looking for by what they're sharing with you. So look at a job description, look at the the details of the program as you're applying. Really notice skills that they're mentioning, or qualifications that they're seeking. If they mentioned it a lot, that means it's probably pretty important to them. You can also look at the organization as a whole. So maybe the job description is a little sparse, but if you don't get much from the job description, I really recommend looking at where you're applying, the organization. Do they have a mission statement? Why do they have this scholarship program? What is the history of it? Integrating that, I think, is helpful to kind of understanding the context of where you're applying and how you fit into that. And of course, looking at yourself too, in terms of what do you have to bring to this table, and what are your achievements? What are your accomplishments that you want to highlight? And this will all come together to determine what you want on the one-page type of resume. So when you're writing content on a resume, I'd say as a career advisor, we spend a lot of time kind of nitpicking how people describe what they do. And part of that is, I think a lot of times we all undersell ourselves, or we just kind of quickly write it down and we write down what we do. But you want to try to choose good action verbs, words like evaluated performance, provided feedback. You want to quantify whenever you can as well, to give the reader a good visual sense of what they can hear the story, they can feel it, they can see kind of the scope of what you did. Held office hours, it might be taking something from the position description and integrating it into this example. Another example, I always veto responsible for. Tell me what you were responsible for first. Interviewed, researched, wrote, copy edited, and then they're quantifying like how much they did. So a lot of time is spent on really working with those descriptions to make them strong, make them aligned, make them honest. But at the same time, I want you to be proud of what you've done, and you can share achievements, you can show accomplishments and numbers and things like that. So as I was talking about, quantifying is awesome to do because it really gives someone a sense of what you did. Sharing results and accomplishments is great if you can do that. So you may be in a lab on campus or work with a professor, and maybe, you are running your samples over and over again, and you are master at the GC, and you've really, have your thing down. However, you want to get out of those, you want to share the weeds and share the skill and share the equipment, all those kinds of things. But then I also want you to get out and share what is the bigger picture. You are doing this for a reason. And what is that reason? How is the work that you're doing adding to the big whole, the big picture? And it's okay that you're not doing the whole thing, because you're going to be honest about that. But it's good to share context. It's good to share how the piece that you're doing is contributing to this study on climate change, or whatever it happens to be, so that they can see that you have an understanding of what you're doing, why it's important, and to that bigger picture. Try to ask yourself and question, when you're describing your experiences, not just what you did and when you did, but again, why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And as I highlighted earlier, trying to have strong action verbs and keywords are good to be thoughtful of when you're writing your resume. Here's some examples of strong action verbs. So when I'm crossing out responsible for, you want to go right to the more descriptive verbs if possible. And just to kind of highlight for resumes in particular, you want to customize to wherever it is and tailor wherever it is you're sending it to. The second point on here, being ATS aware. So ATS refers to kind of, that stands for applicant tracking systems, which is kind of like the AI that a lot of companies use when they have large populations of people applying to their internships and their positions. They might have computer systems scanning resumes first before a human eye is looking at them. So just being aware that, again, you're really aligning it to the job description and using those keywords too. So that kind of fits in with that as well. Now I want to dive into CVs a little bit and share, there's a lot that's very similar in between resumes and CVs, but share a few things about that. Oh, I just noticed I have a couple of things in the chat, so I want to peek at that. Okay, good. Should we write the content and experience section or skill section? Okay, good. So usually I see more content being described in the experience section than I do the skills section. So you would share the experience so they kind of know the context of where you did it. Now you may integrate skills in your descriptions of those experiences though, if that makes any sense. So I think of skills as almost like a listing of I'm, fluent in Mandarin and I know how to, I know how to program in these languages, or I'm competent in these applications. But you could use experience to highlight, demonstrate, this is where I've used C, plus, or this is where I have, I translated for, this particular position that I was in. And so it could demonstrate your ability to speak Mandarin or whatnot. So have more of the description in that experience section. Good question. All right. So a CV, I think about it as more of a professional, again, academic research is where we usually see CVs asked for. Sometimes in graduate school applications, they'll ask for a CV as well, but certainly your professors use CV in their language, but it's really a place to be more comprehensive and track your professional and academic accomplishments. So for the applicant, you are hoping that this document is going to introduce you, what you've done, and hopefully get you to the next stage in the process, which a lot of times might be an interview. So a search committee that's using, or a selection committee using the CV. So they're assessing, fit for their program, their scholarship, or their position, their lab. And it also could be a tool that they use to, ask questions or probe more and learn more about you as well for interviews. We do recommend, when you're thinking about how to format your CV, most of our students will lead with education, because that's your job right now. You're a full-time student. It's strong. You want to start off with that so they know, contextually, academically, who you are. But then after that, you could dive into what you think is your strength. And that can vary person by person if that is their research, or maybe it's your skill set, the skills that you want to highlight. So you do have flexibility in order. But so if you see samples of CVs and you might see, oh, this person has education, and then they have experience, and then they have activities and skills and whatnot. Don't feel like you have to follow that exact model. The one I would probably follow is having education first, because that's something I know about you all, is that you are all students, and that's your primary job right now. So have that up on top, but after that, you have some flexibility of how you'd want to order that. And keep in mind, people read from top down. So you want to engage them early, that they want to keep reading. And a CV may be more than one page. It might be 2, it might be 3 pages. So if you have something very special about you, make it appear on the first page so they see it. And again, you don't want that to be buried. It's okay to move some things around so that they can see that right away. I will say I borrowed this slide from a PowerPoint for graduate students. So a lot of these, I know as undergraduate students, we wouldn't have, but just to kind of give you a sense of, maybe some of you do have these things, but even in the future, to think about, as you submit, publications, you could mention that they're, in submission before they're, accepted, things like that, because sometimes they're not printed yet. You just want to be honest about where things things are. Posters, I'll sometimes see for undergraduates, if you're involved in Europe, you could highlight some of those types of things as well. If you've had awards and scholarships or grants or whatnot, you could certainly highlight those on a CV. We see more of that again with Europe, especially for our undergrads. We'll see, award amounts or what the projects are highlighted on CVs for undergraduates. And so you might have some additional categories on your CV. So you may really want to highlight your language abilities because you're looking at some of the international scholarships. You want to highlight that for a particular reason. Go ahead and make a category for it, if that makes sense, or make a category for whatever makes sense for you, depending on your experiences and your abilities and your skills. A lot of people at the end of their CV will have references listed as well, and that's something we don't see on a resume or don't advise on a resume either, but on a CV you'll see that frequently. Of course, keep in mind, like follow whatever, whoops, I didn't mean to go ahead to follow whatever also they're asking you to do. So if there's any parameters in terms of what they want to see on that CV, of course, that's the template to follow first and foremost. In terms of putting it together, you do still want this to be something that's not overwhelming, that's still visually appealing, that someone can scan. They don't have to read it. This is different than the essays you're going to be writing, the personal statements, etc. This should be something that they can look at some bullets. They can find section headers and see what they want to see right away. So in terms of visual appeal, you still want some white space. We talked a lot about the content and the organization, and length will vary depending on you and what you've done, and if they give you any parameters as well. So some additional resources that can be helpful for you. So I'm going to pop on here in just a minute on our website, because we do have some resources there that I think are great for starting off. On Handshake as well, you are always welcome to make appointments. We do virtual appointments. We're doing them in the summer. So if you're working on your documents and just want a second eye, a second opinion, feel free to set up an appointment there. And I just want to peek at the chat. Great. Oh yeah, very good question as well. So the question is, since resumes have limited space, what are some of the tips about selecting what details to share or not share about the experiences to be concise, but also thorough? So it's always this balancing act. Of being exactly what you're describing. You want to be thorough so that they have a sense that you have the details of the quantifying, etc. They can have a sense of the story of what you've done, but you can't spend the whole page writing about that one thing. So you also have to be concise. So there's a few things that I try to do. I mean, I try to be very direct in things like word choice. And if you can say something in one word versus 4, do it. Use those action verbs. You don't have to have complete sentences. I know for some people that are writers, that's hard, but you can be very direct in your language on resumes, which can be helpful. In terms of choosing kind of what to share or not, probably the biggest thing for resumes to me is thinking about the audience and thinking about who is the reader. If you are applying for an internship in a certain area, and again, really be responsive to that particular organization, that company, the job description. And that's how I would select what to include or what to not include at this point. And if you go to the interview and it comes up, you can always add something in at that point. This is a highlight reel. It's not going to have everything you did from your positions. So you do need to be very selective. And so, so I think the best thing to do is to consider who the, I don't want to say the reader, but who the position and what the position is that you're applying for, or what the end goal is, that they might be, comparing it to, for that particular position. But, you could also get some feedback, always make an appointment. We can give you our 2 cents on it as well, because those are hard things to make those calls and figure out what to include or not to include. As a reader, I will say, like, as an advisor, I always find it helpful. I don't know what I don't know. So I always say, add it in. It's a lot easier to cut back. And sometimes you can even use little formatting tricks to cut something back as well. So, I might see an experience and think, gosh, this is really related, even if it's not in the job description. I'd want them to see this. Maybe you want to cut back on like a part-time job that you have on there, or maybe a skill set you could take off, or take off the relevant courses because they have your transcript, or whatever it may happen to be. Okay, another question. Let me peek. Good. If searching for an internship as an undergraduate student with minimal experience, but you possess the skills required and ability to work well, how to come out among others who might have more experience? Yeah, no, great question. I mean, we all have to gain experience somewhere. And, the big thing that I always, recommend is that, consider that experience word super broadly. So you may have a paper, an academic project, or a paper that you wrote, or something that you did even like in a student organization as a leader that could be super transferable. And it may not be an experience, like you haven't had a job or you haven't been in that industry, but if you could show, I have to work on teams all the time in what I do, or I, had to break down this big piece of information and analyze it and show and argue something for this project or for this paper that I had to do. I mean, one thing that you all have, you have your classes, of course, and again, if you have other involvements, really try to think about how those might be transferable and try to describe that on a resume. I will also say, this goes beyond resume a little bit, but when you get to the point of applying for positions, if you have the opportunity to write a cover letter or an email that can accompany your resume, do it. If it's optional, do not think it's optional. In your case, I think it's always an advantage in any case to use that advantage, because one thing you can also do is show interest. You can show some passion. You can show that this is where you want to go. This is your goal. This is what you want to do in the future, is to get experience in this area. But I will say, places really want people who want to be there. They don't know if you're applying to 200 positions or, just 5. And so if something's of high interest for you, let them know that, in your own way, in your own personality. So utilizing cover letters, going into interviews really well researched and prepared, or even if it's a simple like email that you get to send your resume off to, utilize the body of that email to make yourself stand out and indicate interest, impress them with your research as much as possible. So really, really great questions. Thanks for asking some of those. I just want to share also a couple of the resources that might be helpful for you as you're working on drafting a CV. And so I popped over to our website, and underneath preparing for success, if you go to resumes and cover letters, I just popped on resumes and samples. We do have a lot of resources on here, such as general resume templates. We have cover letter templates that are, I'll show you, downloadable Word or Google Docs that you can put in your own information in a format. We have a lot of samples by school. So if you wanted to check out some samples by school, but I just also wanted to show you, we have added some undergraduate CVs to the page too. So on here, we have a CV template, and here, I mean, the beginning talks about the differences between a resume and CV, but then the template starts of some information you could include and you can download this and put in your own information. A lot of people like this because it has some lines in it. It has the bullets, and those can be super frustrating. I know sometimes. We do recommend using like blank docs versus templates that are created by Word and Canva and so forth when you're working on this. But this gives you, you might take out this whole category of honors and awards and relevant coursework. These are all optional, but keep on the clinical experience or another section that makes sense for you. So this just gives a lot of options of categories you may want to include or you may take out. So feel free to utilize this. And additionally, on the page, we have a few samples. We're building this, I will be honest. So we only have, I think, one in each category, but you are welcome to, peek at some sample CVs for undergraduates specifically. So you could kind of see what this could look like with like honors, relevant coursework. This person talked about their research experience. They're talking about their leadership experience. This one's quite long. Some are just 2 pages. This one's a 3rd page. So, just some different samples to give you ideas as much as anything. And I want to peek because I see I have some things in the chat here. Ooh, yes, Remsis. I have looked at that a long time ago, so I don't know if they build that out more. So interesting. I'm happy to share the link of this. Absolutely. And let me go back to maybe this page because this takes you to all of those. And I'll put that right here in the chat. Okay. So any additional questions that you may have that we could talk more about today? Do you have a little bit of time? Any specific things that you're working on for applications coming up? Oh, of course. Yeah, happy to put that link in. This is kind of fun because I work with resumes all the time, but I've never done a specific workshop on these competitive scholarships, but I think it's an interesting take at it for sure, because you're kind of bridging into that academic, that CV kind of area. But if any of you have specific questions or want second opinions, we're happy to look at just how you're describing the experiences or those types of things. That's why we're here too. If any of you are taking that document, then you want to apply to something like a federal job or another kind of position, we'd be happy to work with you on taking your CV and making it into that 1 page or 2, like a resume for future positions as well.
I also want to add that if you are part of the Scholarship Opportunities Program, either as a student worker or if you're in the application process itself, then take advantage of making appointments with the Vision and Career Pathways. Because we're conferencing all week and not there in person. That's why we set aside this week as the week for you to not just attend this, but also to make appointments. Obviously, if this week can't happen for you, then you can also do it a different week, but we really want you to take advantage of all the resources on campus, which is why we have been introducing you to the Writing Center, and now we're introducing the Division of Career
Right.
Pathways. We want to have all resources available to you, and you don't want to say, oh, I missed out on this resource or missed out on that resource. So in the email that I sent you on Thursday, I sent you to the Career Pathways website and their page to make appointments. You can also log on to Handshake and make appointments, but I'm basically telling you, make appointments with them this week if possible, but have them before you hit submit and you actually turn in your CV or resume, have them look at it first.
Yes, that's great. And I just put in the chat my name and my email too. So if you don't see anything on Handshake this week, we do have a few people out and so forth. There's a small enough amount of you. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to work with you too. And we could try to find a good time to meet as well. And I did see someone asked a question about writing a cover letter for a research lab. Is it the CV? So a cover letter is different than a CV. So that usually is kind of an introductory, really more of that letter. Like it could be an email that you're sending and you are attaching your resume for a position, but it's more of the letter of interest of why you want this position, what interests you about that research lab, et cetera. And we have samples on that link I sent you. So check that out for sure, because it is a little bit different. And another question about at what year does undergraduate student usually start looking for an internship or job? Junior year, thinking of an internship in public health. Yeah, honestly, people look for internships and positions at all different stages. So there's no one right time. For all of you, it's going to be different depending on what else you have going on in your life with your academics, with your other responsibilities, etc. So if you feel like you have room in your schedule to add in an internship, I think it can always be valuable it's almost like test driving different positions, gaining that experience, seeing what you like, building skills kind of in a real world context. So if you feel like you have time to dedicate, and most internships might be, a minimum of 8 hours a week, some might be 10. That's probably the most typical, 10 to 12 hours a week. If you have time to dedicate to it, then I think I highly recommend checking that out. And depending on if you are a public health major, there's also public health practicum sites too that would be a requirement for your major. That might be something to consider as well, because they have established relationships with some organizations as well that would count for that practicum, but also at the same time you get real world work experience too, which is kind of great too. Of course. Yes. Thank you so much.
Right. I just wanted to say thank you.
Of course.
It's been wonderful. And I hope that the students will take advantage of you and all your knowledge. But yeah, I have a meeting with a student, so I have to
That's
bow.
good. Absolutely. Thanks so much. Yes. Well, I'll hang on for a couple more minutes if folks have any questions, but thanks for inviting me to come today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Great. Well, thank you all. Yes, feel free to take off if you're all set, but if you have any other questions, you're welcome to ask. Okay. Thanks for all your good questions. I appreciate it.